not about money. It's about sending a message. Everything burns.
Cool.
Fire! 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 Fire!
Alright, how's it going, Black Survival fans? My name is Matthew, and welcome back to our second installment of Who Would Win. Now, last week it was a battle of the blades, but this week the people have spoken and it's time to see who can throw a harder game. In today's video, we will be comparing Adriana against Camilla, both throw characters and both strong in their own right. Adriana is all about wearing down her opponent. She has sustained long-term damage with Arson, as well as recovery, denial, and kind of pretty big burst damage with just Blaze. Camilla takes kind of a different approach here, but just like Adriana, he excels in one-to-one combat, having not one, but two purely offensive tools, and when you commit them together, it can be terrifying to have to face. So, who will come out on top? Will Duande dance circles around the gasoline-doused damsel, or will our firebug turn this theater into a bonfire? So, let's find out. And again, just a brief thing I want to say here before we really get into the thick of it. So thanks so much for all the support on my last video. I really put a lot of time and effort into the editing, and I'm just really so happy that people enjoyed it. It really kind of gave me the motivation to make this video we're watching right now. So if you enjoy the series, then make sure you leave a like rating and subscribe if you aren't already. Like I said, I'm going to try to make these come out as often as I can. If I can do it on a weekly basis, that'll be fantastic. But I'm not going to promise anything. But yeah, anyways. Just like our last video, I've got a ton of trials lined up for today to test every scenario we could really conceive of. So I got a lot of help this time actually from Disgusting from Discord. So massive thanks to him. I'm actually going to be talking over the gameplay for this trial right here because the results of this trial were very easy to predict. As always, our first trial, of course, it will be the vanilla Final Destination rounds. No abilities, no healing. All we really want to see in action are the effects of the raw stats of the characters against the raw stats of the other characters. Okay, so as I mentioned, the results are pretty much what we expected them to be because when you look at the stats themselves, both characters have the exact same armor and health stat, but Adriana just has 4 more stat attack than Camilla. So this difference is, like I said, this difference in damage is just very to understand from a technical standpoint. If the trial's still going after I finish talking, I'll probably just let the trial run out so you actually see the full trial, but I mean, I think we all understood what the outcome from this trial was going to be anyways. Okay, so the next few tests are where things start to get really fun. So in our last video, both characters had 1 combat ability and 1 passive. However, this time, all 4 abilities can be activated by the player, and so they can really be tested for independently. So we're going to begin here by testing Blaze versus Anima Ladron, obviously both being the combat abilities.
Survive.
I will soon warm you up. Set you. You stop. Set feeling I tap. Feeling I tap. You seem to. Feeling attack. I will soon warm you up. Set you. Feeling you stop. You seem to. Set you. Feeling ice. You seem to. You seem to. Set you.
Okay, so in both trials, you'll notice that Camilo finishes ahead of the Adriana, but in both trials, kind of both characters were always 1 to 2 hits away from lethal at the very end, so we can kind of conclude that this matchup is a little bit more RNG reliant than anything else, especially when you consider the fact that these are throw characters. But when you really look at it, 1 to 2 misses or crits is really all you really need to win this fight. So it really leans towards kind of the RNG of that match to kind of see who's going to come out on top in this specific situation. But moving on from that, something to point out here is that Blaze isn't purely damage. Blaze has an incredibly useful secondary effect that reduces the healing of opponents by 30%. So we redid the trials under some strict conditions. we both attacked each other to the point where we could kind of eat all 3 of our breads, and then we kind of stopped and healed with those 3 breads that I mentioned. The Camilo would be sure to use Anima as his first hit, so that he would get the most amount of boosted attacks, along with obviously the most amount of reduced attacks from the Adriana. And then I would Blaze as my last hit, so that I would be making sure to impair his healing as he went for the healing. Like I said, we'd be going for the healing at the exact same time. So we did that because I really wanted to see kind of how we can affect the interactions with the actual healing ability itself. So I'll show you the trials, and then we'll get back kind of into the discussion.
To survive.
I will soon warm you. Is that you? You seem You. You seem feeling icy like me. Feeling icy. Feeling icy. Is that you?
First kill. To survive.
I will soon warm you. Feeling icy. Is that you? Is that you? You seem to. Is that you? Feeling icy. Feeling icy. Is that you? Feeling. Is that you?
First kill.
So these are actually some really cool results, and really these results should change kind of how we look at the Adriana-Camilla matchup a lot, because while in our previous trials, Camilla made the exchange fairly close, albeit with some luck, of course, but when we add healing into that equation, then Adriana now has the opportunity to really out-sustain Anima Ladron, which was Camilla's only real way of matching our Firefly here in damage. So essentially, 2 players with similar mastery, similar levels, and similar healing, the Adriana will very, very consistently come out on top. And the Adriana, as we tried to highlight right here, she doesn't really need that much healing. Like, it's not as if I'm saying, like, you need stacks and stacks of healing for it to be effective. You just need, basically, the early game heals that you would get in a standard match. And you're really going to be able to just go that extra mile and pull ahead of enemy characters who have abilities that might give you trouble. Like, for example, the Anima Ladron. But this is where things start to get really interesting. I actually had a hell of a lot of fun with this next part, and both myself and Disgusting, who was helping me, as I mentioned before, we were both actually pretty surprised by these results. So in order to incorporate the field abilities, in addition to our combat abilities, we both began kind of channeling at the same time, which is fairly easy. We both spawn into the game, we both go to well, and we both channel the second we get to well. So it's fairly simple that we were able to start channeling at the same time. Duende has a longer channel time, so we kind of tried to look at channel time as kind of a factor as well, which is like why we start at the same time. So we took that as a factor to deal with, which meant that pretty much all the time, Adriana is going to be getting an extra hit off on the Camilo. And for the sake of this trial, we're not including the food either. And after you see the results of the trial, you'll see that you don't really need, like, including food wouldn't really make much of a difference in this sense. But anyways, that's enough of me talking, and I'll get into these results, and I'll be back with you guys right after.
Are you prepared? Then please do your best to
Lucky.
survive.
I got a match on me. Feeling icy. You seem to stop. You icy like me.
To survive.
I got a match on me. Say, you feeling 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 ice. That you.
First kill. alive!
I got a match on me. Feel the ice. Say stop! Oh, say stop! You seem to
First kill!
Okay, so elephant in the room right here. Let's address this first. Duande in itself is a very RNG ability. We see Camilla's attack stat go from 18 in one game all the way up to 26 in another game, and this is a massive leap. But what we can really see from these trials is something that might not really be expected, and that Arson boosts Adriana's combat effectiveness to incredible heights when you really think of it. Blaze is powerful just in its own right, but landing a Blaze in Arson gives plus 20 skill damage onto the normal hit, which is effectively about I'd say about a third of Camilo's starting health bar, which is pretty crazy. So Blaze boosted Blaze. It's actually one of the strongest attacks in the entire game. And even though Camilo has kind of the higher attack and the better defense after his stat modifiers here, there's just so much damage he ends up taking through Arson and from that initial Blaze, he's just not able to kind of overcome that damage that he's taking. Okay, so let's get into the results. Beginning here with the early game, let's just do ourselves a quick recap. So, Adriana comes out on top in any fight where both characters don't have their abilities off cooldown available to them. This is particularly important for Camilo, as his cooldowns are achingly long compared to Adriana. In a matchup with abilities, Camilo does have the potential to luck through, but like he'd have to get insane luck with Duande stat distribution, like insane Duande stat distribution, as well as a few lucky crits or lucky misses. But typically, the Adriana is still favored, as even with a very limited amount of recovery, she can still sustain through kind of the duration timers of Camilo's stat buffs. Moving on next to the mid game, this is a lot different. In the early game, Arson can viably be considered a factor, as most players are kind of scrambling to control individual areas. And the longer you stay at kind of that area that you need to, the more you're really going to get yourself set up to start playing aggressively. But for those reasons, like I said about controlling areas, the ability to shut down any area on the map and the ability to basically be untouchable by any character for essentially the entire duration of Arson is extremely powerful. Now, obviously, Arson can only do so much. If you're being contested by several people, multiple people, you chase a few people away, and then a few more people come in after you, you'll be at half health, they'll be just showing up, so they'll be at full health. Obviously, if people, keep showing up at your area, then you're not untouchable. But what I'm saying is, in a 1 versus 1 scenario, you're essentially untouchable in that regard. But as we move here into the middle game, a single area control loses its luster in, like I was mentioning, these 1v1 scenarios. So sure, Arson can have some cool interactions with stuff like animal spawns, but overall, opponents often lose very little in just leaving the area and completely removing that home field advantage from the Adriana. And on the same note, both Camilo's abilities become much better in this part of the game. And the reason for that is they become much more versatile, and other abilities become much less versatile. So Camilo can activate Duande and then move between areas without losing those effects of that ability. So for these reasons, Camilo has a very easy time dominating Adriana at this portion of the game. And now, of course, for the late game. The late game is very much like the early game for these characters in terms of their interactions, with the main difference, I guess I would say, is that I think Adriana is probably even stronger than she is in that early game scenario. When you get bottlenecked down to one area, or even 3 areas, Arson becomes incredibly powerful once again, after being basically useless for the past several rounds. And I guess the main kind of difference here between Adriana and Camilo is that Camilo is basically never useless throughout the entire game. He's never useless, whereas Arson, kind of, like I said, it kind of drops off as you get to the middle game and then picks up again as you start to get into the late. But the biggest thing here is that Adriana can put an incredible amount of pressure on her opponents at this time. It simply isn't possible for them to just back out, heal, catch their breath, and then go back to the game when they're ready. Because there is no place to back out to. And while Duande It's a fantastic ability at this part of the game. It's a fantastic ability at any part of the game. The 3-second channel time means that Adriana has ample potential to punish you as you try to set up for your ability. So for all these reasons, we're going to say that, yes, Camilla is certainly strong in this part of the game, but Adriana is the late game queen. So there we go, another episode come and gone. Man, I didn't really expect to get another one done so quickly, honestly, but as always, check the description for any relevant information about this video, including the straw poll vote for next week's video. Leave a comment for complaints, suggestions, anything like that. And yeah, thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.